Hi, this is Owen from Owsey, and I'm going to begin by talking about how the song that you just heard started out. First of all, I just want to say that the principles you'll learn throughout this tutorial can of course be extended into other DAWs, and we can also extend most of the other techniques and ideas from the synths and plugins used here into whatever it is that you happen to use, so I'll aim to keep things as accessible as possible. Now, a lot of the time people like to start off by working from some kind of pre-made template. This might include effects that have already been loaded onto send tracks for convenience. But personally I prefer to begin from a blank slate every time because I find that each song usually needs very different treatment from the next. So this song in particular revolves around an underlying synth pad created using only a simple modulated sine wave. It didn't need to be anything complex at this point because it was all about setting a basic tone, and it was used for coming up with the chords that would eventually guide the rest of the track. Now we will get into more detailed and complex techniques as the videos go on, but for now I'm purposely going to start things off very simple. So in FL Studio, to load a synth or plugin, all we have to do is click this plus tab and choose from this drop down menu of both third party and native plugins. Now I already have Omnisphere loaded up here, and as you can hear the initial preset is a simple saw waveform. And I will be using saw waveforms down the line, but for now I just want to begin with something that's a little bit more rounded and mellow. So the first thing I changed was the shape of the sine wave using this slider here, and I turned it about a quarter of the way up. But basically shape is going to sweep through the waveforms of this selected wavetable, and in the case of the sine wave it's only going to be a subtle difference. So at the moment all we have is this simple sine wave with a slightly altered shape, and the first thing I done to spice that up a bit was to add a chorus effect as an insert on the mixer. So this is FL Studio's mixer, and basically every sound that we create will be routed to one of these inserts you see in the mixer, and from these inserts we can apply individual effects such as EQ, reverb and the chorus that we're about to do now. So to route to the mixer we go back into the channel rack, select whatever item you want to route. Back into the mixer, right click, channel routing, and route selected channels to this track. So to add effects we go to the slot menu here, another drop down menu like before. Now for the chorus I chose this TAL chorus effect, which is a completely free plugin which you can download from the TAL website. It's nice because it's supposed to emulate that kind of Juno 60s chorus sound. I'm going to just do some quick before and afters to demonstrate the sort of effect chorus has. So here's before, and here's after. So chorus works by basically delaying the given signal and modulating the pitch of that signal against itself. Now, in my first course I described it using a kind of choir analogy, which I still find quite helpful. So if you picture a choir singing together, each member sings at slightly different pitches at slightly different times. And that's what helps a choir attain such a kind of rich and full sound, so chorus can really help warm up a sound too. Now this TAL chorus isn't as comprehensive as others, but for a completely free plugin it does a perfect job. So first of all I'm going to turn the signal up to fully wet. Now often when applying effects it's better to route a fully wet signal separately into the dry signal, using what we call sends on the mixer, but we will get into that eventually. Now I used the second chorus mode here, which is a kind of faster modulation. Now the most important function here is the stereo width. Now I had a stereo width of about 30%. And this was for two reasons. The first reason was because later on in the song we'll have kind of wide stereo pads and other elements which will be fighting for space, and so by bringing the stereo width down here it will help to keep the sound tamed and later on in the song. But the second and more important reason I brought it down was so that you can hear these kind of subtle pitch wavering effects that it introduces if you listen carefully. I'll go back up and slowly bring it down again. Now I find this effect particularly nice on the higher notes, and it's much easier to hear, so I'll do the same thing again an octave above. Soon we'll look at LFOs to modulate this kind of pitch effect, but let's move on to the next step for now. So I filtered out the upper harmonics originally using FabFilter's Volcano plugin, but for accessibility I'll just go for a simple native parametric EQ. And for this particular sound I only really wanted the lower harmonics to come through because it would leave space for all of the mid-synth elements, and sort of this was really only for creating a bit of underlying warmth. Now for EQ I usually tend to go with FabFilter Pro Q as it's far more versatile, but this will do for now as it's just kind of basic EQ cuts. And for convenience sake I like to save EQ presets with simple roll-offs at both the low end here and the high end here. So everything below around 30 Hz is kind of gently rolled off, and the same goes for everything above 15,000. I have presets with different degrees of slope, so if I go to the steep 48, you can see the slope changes and it's a much more drastic cut. I'll go back to the 24 slope for now. And I'm just going to gradually roll off some of those upper harmonics. And I'll also remove some of the low end here. So now we have this very centered sound around the low mid region. So that concludes that very simple sound. Like I said, we're not getting complex just yet. We're just kind of building a simple basic foundation to get us going. Now, let's talk about the chord progression for a moment. I'm not particularly well versed in music theory, so I'm not going to talk in great lengths about it. It can be an extremely useful tool to know, and I'd encourage you to learn some if you can. But in terms of songwriting and the chord progression, this song remains quite simple. In fact, I believe it follows a simple B, C sharp, E flat minor chord progression most of the way through, with the addition of 2 add 9 chords. So let's go into the piano roll here. So that would be B, C sharp, and the E flat minor. So for the B chord, to reach the B add 9 chord, all we do is add in a note which is one whole step above the root, which will be, in the case of the B, a C sharp. So instead of playing the B, we add in this C sharp and then it becomes B add 9. Now the same goes for the C sharp chord. All we do is add in the E flat to come up with this, as opposed to this. Now, however, the extension of the E flat minor chord will be an add 4 chord as opposed to the add 9. So by adding a G sharp into the original E flat minor chord, we'll have an E flat minor add 4. So that's the E flat minor, and this will be the E flat add 4. Again, this isn't one of my strong points. Most of the time I simply go with whatever sounds good to me. So let's get these chords into the piano roll. It's usually about a 50-50 split on whether or not I play the chords and record them into the grid via a MIDI keyboard or whether I just draw them in manually. But for this kind of track, and also for the sake of convenience, let's just draw them in. So the first pattern I play of this chord progression is actually going to be down an octave compared with what I've been playing. So I've been playing it up around here, and it's actually going to be an octave below that. So that kind of moves it into a bass territory as opposed to sort of low mids. We will sort of adjust the EQ accordingly depending on where we are in the song. But let's go ahead and just get this in. Starting with the B. That lasts for 3 beats in the first bar. another 3 beats for the C sharp, and it's going to be a whole bar for the E flat. And I'm going to copy and paste this 4-bar pattern over and make it an 8-bar pattern. So the timing is obviously in 4/4 at 100 BPM, which is pretty standard, and the gaps you hear in this progression at the end of some of the bars are really going to be best utilized for stylistic purposes in the chorus. So the silence at the end of these bars will allow for some kind of creative interplay between the male elements, which we'll come to soon enough. So let's just do a quick run through that. Now let's move over to what I mentioned earlier as placeholder drums. Now this will be a sort of simple pattern to help lay the foundations of the rhythm section later on, and will only be temporary, so for that reason we aren't going to spend too long here. So let's begin with the temporary kick drum. The purpose at this point isn't to refine the sounds, because if I spend so much time doing that, I think it would be easy to lose inspiration. So instead I just want to kind of establish a general rhythm and elaborate on its sonic character later on. So I'll go into the temp drum folder here. And these are just some samples provided by Sonic Academy. So the kick drum moves quite slowly at first, centering around a downbeat at the start of every bar. Now there's an offbeat note in between bar 2 somewhere. And a note on the 3rd beat of the 4th bar too. So I'm just going to copy and paste these 4 bars over and make a simple 8-bar pattern for the time being. And I'm going to place this pattern into the playlist along with the original sign pad. Now let's go up to pattern 3 and move on to the clap sound. I keep the kick's rhythm slow at this point because the chorus eventually moves on to a 4 on the floor pattern, and by reserving the kick drum at this early stage, it kind of creates more of an impact when we get to the chorus. So in essence I'm sort of teasing this kick drum in. Now for the clap, the first 3 bars I have it playing on the 4th beat of each bar. And in the 4th bar we have a clap on both the 2 and the 4. I'm just going to copy and paste this over again. There is a slight variation. I think there's just a clap on the 3rd beat of every bar from bars 4 to 8. So in a moment you'll hear an example of that interplay I was speaking about earlier, where the kind of gap at the end of the bar of the pads, the clap will come in there and it'll kind of be a sort of exchange between the 2 elements. But before we get there, I just want to go on to the hat. Eventually I replaced this hat with a recording I make of 2 shakers I have here in my home studio, but for now all it is going to be a 16th note pattern with variations in the velocity. So I'm going to go up to pattern 4 here. And for now I'm just going to do 1 bar and copy and paste it the whole way across. So the velocity is going to be quite low on the downbeat and then gradually rises and fluctuates to create a sort of simple shuffled rhythm. For convenience, people may want to quantize the pattern using the provided score files, which I'll show you just now quickly. And basically these are a bunch of kind of pre-edited rhythms you can apply to if you want. Generally people quantize to realign certain imperfections in their MIDI recordings. But to be honest, I think it can often sound quite nice to have that sort of slight bit out of time going on. So I'll go back to the velocity edits. And let's just hear all this so far. First I'll copy and paste this over 8 bars. I'll mute the sound pad just for the time being. And then bring it in. Now there was one final thing I meant to do regarding the sound pad, which was that I wanted to fine tune the overall sound down a quarter tone. So the whole song will eventually sit in this tuning, and ultimately I do this because I think it sounds quite nice, and it also goes into sort of territory of sound you don't hear so much in music. So if I go back into Omnisphere, so if we go and tweak the fine tune parameter here, you'll see it's measured in cents. Now the 12 semitones in an octave amount to 100 cents each. Now humans struggle to tell the difference in small intervals of up to about 5 cents at a time, but the perception differs from person to person. So by fine tuning the pitch either up or down about 50 cents, we're changing it by a quarter tone, which is simply halfway between a semitone. So this is what it sounds like. Or I can turn it up. So that just about finishes this section. I just want to do a quick recap and go through it all one more time. Okay, so in the next section we'll look at establishing an atmosphere or a sort of ambient background. I'll see you there.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content. And if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.